Hello, everybody. Welcome to this workshop, and sorry for the delay, some connection issue here. My name is Massa Maktori. I'm a solution architect at Kong, and I'm also global lead for the partner enablement program. Let me here. Okay, just before I start, if you want to do the lab at the end, because it's hands-on, you need to have an account on here on the Kong Education. It's a Kong Academy. So if you are not registered, it's just on education.konghq.com. You can register if you want to. If you want to do it yourself at the end. Otherwise, I will do it. So before we start, who is familiar with the Ingress controller concept? Okay, and Kubernetes Gateway API? A little bit? Okay. So the agenda, and I'm going to shorten a little bit the first part, for today is speak about the Kubernetes service connectivity in general, then speak about Kubernetes Ingress, what's wrong with it, or what are the limitations here, and then speak about what is new, what some people call the Ingress V2, or the Kubernetes Gateway API, and its capability, and we will do a short hands-on at the end. So let's start by putting some context. Here, it's a Kubernetes cluster. You have everything running. You have your master nodes, worker nodes. Everything is running. Your namespace, pods, your application are running. Question is, how are you going to access to this Kubernetes service from the outside? In fact, there is three types. Sorry. Yeah, there is three service types in Kubernetes. The cluster IP, which is in fact it will create an IP for the internal communication from an application inside the cluster. So outside you don't have access to it. The second one is a node port, and in this case it means that you link your pod port to the node port, and you give access to this port outside. By doing that, it means that well, it works, but it means that you will have to also either provide this port, and there are over 30,000 as far as I remember, or you will have to put something that will translate it or hide it. Otherwise, your customer will have to know which port for which service they need to access. So it's a little bit cumbersome here. The last way to do it is, of course, to use the load balancer type. And when you use the load balancer type, what happens is it will ask an external object to give him access to expose his service as a load balancer. And in this case, if you are using some cloud provider, they will do it automatically, and they will create a public IP for you, and they will give you access through this public IP, and your service will be exposed this way. This works. Problem is, if you have hundreds of services, it means that you will have to create hundreds of load balancer with hundreds of public IP. And I'm not sure that your CFO in general will be very happy of that, because it costs a lot. Well, if you add them all, it can be quite expensive. So there is another way. And the other way is, of course, the Ingress and the usage of Ingress. And in this case, goal here is, instead of having each service having its own external IP address, just expose the ingress itself, and then having this object, the ingress, doing the routing inside the cluster for you. Oh, so just a little bit too fast. So the other, besides the fact that it's less expensive, the other thing that is interesting here is also that instead of creating a lot of entry points, you create only one single entry point to your Kubernetes cluster. And from a security point of view, it's much better because you can. It's much easier to manage. It's much easier to secure and to audit. So this is mainly the reason why the Ingress was developed. So what is a Kubernetes Ingress? In fact, this is an API object, and it's, as I said, it's to manage the way that you expose the service outside the cluster. The Ingress specification itself is around for a while. In fact, I think the first Kubernetes was available in 2014. This was out as a beta in 2015. So it's out for a long time, but in fact, it stayed for almost 5 years as a beta. I remember when I did 3 years ago, I think it was 2019, I did a workshop on the Ingress controller at this time, and it was still beta. I think he moved to the networking in 2020, fall 2020. So what you are allowed to do with this specification, you can do traffic routing. You can do, well, it's at the layer 7 level, so it's HTTP, HTTPS, and you can do TLS termination. And one thing is, since it's provided in Kubernetes, it's vendor neutral. At least the Ingress specification itself, the first one. It looks like this, and basically it's quite simple to read. Is create an ingress. This is a kind named finance APIs, and the rules are quite simple. If I receive a request coming from the host example.com and the path is /build, then I send it to the service build on the port 80. If I receive the same request coming from example.com but /orders, I will send it to another service called orders on the service port 443. So this is quite simple. You can route things this way very simply. And how you do that, by the way? Once you create this spec, the only thing you do is just use a kubectl, apply -f, and you put your file, and it's done. Well, in fact, once you create this, what happened? In fact, nothing. Because you have the ingress, you have the rule, but you have nothing to apply it. So now what you need is a controller, something that will read this and enforce it as a policy. And for that, what we developed a while ago, and we are not the only one, we developed a Kong Ingress controller. Basically, this is Kong, the proxy, the data plane or the runtime, where we added another container. This is the same code. There is two containers. One which is a controller. This controller is in charge of watching what's going on the API server, check if there's any new rules. Once he receives them, he configure the Kong proxy to handle any routing, any traffic routing this way. So this is the way it works, and it works fine. One thing that that we realize very, very rapidly is, yes, you can do routing, but the Ingress spec itself is quite limited. And if you compare it to what the gateway can do, it's very, very limited. So because of that, what happened? And what happened to us and what happened to a lot of vendors is we decided to create some customization, some extension. And we created some CRDs, and we create all these different CRDs. First one, the conch plugin, is so you are able to deploy rate limiting, authentication, or anything this way. Consumer, you can create some consumer here using this CRD's custom resource definition that we created here. Same for the Ingress. We did an extension on the Ingress with the Kong Ingress, so we were able to route by header and do other stuff that were not possible. And the last one are the Ingress spec. The original one was limited to HTTP. So we added TCP and UDP and so on. So we did that. But in fact, and this is the most important thing, is we did that, but we are not the only one. All of the, let's say, the vendors that are working in this space did exactly the same thing. And, well, I just put some of them here. So everybody came with his own CRDs, his own specifications, and his own way to do it. So I don't have them all here. I think there is more than 22 different implementation with each of them has his own CRDs and his own customization. And this is a problem because the main goal of the Kubernetes project is to be as much as possible portable, therefore vendor neutral. As soon as you start to do that, it's not portable the same way. It's very specific. And for that reason, at the same time then the Kubernetes Ingress was GA, there was something else that happened. Some people started to think about the fact that it's against what we try to do with the Kubernetes project. And they started a new project called Gateway API. At this time, it was called Service API, but now it's called Gateway API. And this is a project led by the SIG network community. And the goal here is to enhance the service networking for the Kubernetes, but in a consistent way. And the funny thing is, from a timeline perspective, when the Ingress was GA, at the same time there was the alpha of this one, this new specs. So some people call it Ingress V2 because it's the goal here is to try to enhance what is missing in the Ingress, but not only. Not only because if we think about the primary goals of this Gateway API, this is role-oriented, which is something that we don't have with the Ingress spec. So there's, and we'll come back to this later, there is a way to have kind of separation of duty here. It's portable, and the goal is to be portable, and we'll see how they want to do that. And expressive enough, it's meaning that it will embrace a large majority of what exists already for the Ingress to have something common for everything. This is, let's say, the goal. We'll come back also to this. But still, there will be some things that will be specific to some vendors, so it has to be also extensible. And this is basically the main goal of this gateway. Regarding the role-oriented design, this is what we have here. We have 3 levels. We have the gateway class, which is more or less something like the Ingress class. And here it's where you specify all the different gateways that you want to be able to use in your cluster. It means this is the infrastructure level. And it's for that reason that it's more, let's say, the role of an infrastructure provider and to create this kind of thing. The second level is a gateway for a specific cluster, allow which gateway will be used by the different team of the different developers. This is more at the cluster operator level that it will be done. And the last but not least is the HTTP route. This is where the application developer will be able, without having to take care of anything else, will be able to define the way that he wants the traffic to be routed to his service. You see HTTP route here, but it's not only HTTP. It will be also TCP and UDP. So when you put all this together, you can see that normally it's flexible enough to deal with any type of organization, because if you compare it to the Ingress, where there was no real separation, here we have one more layer where you can define who is responsible of what. If you look at the specification, well, if you compare the kind HTTP route, compare it to the Ingress, it's more or less the same. It's quite identical. There is just one thing that is missing here, because this was the alpha. There is something that was added, and we will see it during the end-on. It's the parent ref. The way it works is that at this level, at the HTTP route level, you will be allowed to choose which gateway you are going to use to attach it. So basically, you may have several gateways, and you can choose which one you want to use at this level. On the gateway, it's the place where you define the different gateways that you want to use here. And on the gateway class, you provide the list of all, let's say, the controllers gateways that you allow to use on this infrastructure. If you say, okay, what is the difference with the Ingress? One thing that is interesting is when you, not on day one, when you do that, but more on the day two operation. When you want to change something. When you want to change something on the HTTP route, for instance, here you will be able to just, let's say that you have a new service, a new version of the service. You want to try the canary. You want to split the traffic to a new version. You will be able to do it without asking to anybody else. Just change, as a developer, you change your file here. You update it. You say, hey, now I want to forward 10% of my traffic to this new service. Done, without asking to anybody else. Same way, you are the cluster operator. You want to try a new gateway. You will be able to deploy it here, having several, and say to the application developer, hey, you know what? If you want to try another one, you can do it here. Just add it, and you can check also. You can check and see the result of both of them at the same time. So you can compare them, and you can, and if at any time you want to move from one to the other, it will be totally seamless here. Same when you at the infrastructure level, you need to build a new cluster in some place, new cloud provider, working differently. You will be able to do it using the same file, just doing some modification to apply it to the specific vendors, gateways that are in this particular infrastructure. Any question? It's okay? Clear? Regarding the other part that is related to the how we are going to have as much as possible features in this specification. This is the way that the community consider it. So the core features are the ones that are supposed to be on any implementation. They are common to all of them, or if they are not yet, they are in the roadmap to be implemented very soon. So this is what is common. The extended is, let's say, not common. There is a large majority, but it's not generic or for all of them. But eventually, this one will become a core in the future. And the last one, so for instance here, the HTTP header modification, some tool can do it now, not all of them. So it's for that reason that it's at this level. And the last one, the custom, there is some tricky stuff here. And one of the good examples is regarding the regex. Not all the products use the same rules, and they are, if you already worked with some regex, you, based on the one that you are using, you never know how it will behave. You have to test it, so clearly. So this will be, this kind of things will stay specific because they are more difficult to be portable depending on what you use behind it. One last thing. So we spoke about the Ingress to expose the service outside. One thing that I wanted to show here is the fact that there is no reason to limit the specification to expose this service to the outside. It can be also between services inside. And basically here, we can see you have an example where the parent is a service, and you define the communication between two services. And then here, it means that you will be, with the same kind of specification, you will be able also to define a service mesh. And it's for that reason that the SMI, which is a service mesh initiative, is now collaborating with SIG Network on this particular subject. Okay. Yeah, yeah. What? Oh, here, sorry.
Yeah, I was looking all around.
Okay, hands-on. So normally, so if you want to follow, so I've never tested on Firefox, so let's try if it works. I need to sign in for sure. Since I never used Firefox on this, I need to do it here. Okay. Okay, so I created this lab. So if you want to do it, you can do it at the same time than me. So, and by the way, this lab will be still available after, so you can do it later. The only thing is, it's a work in progress because I created it this morning. So just to tell you that there is not everything there, just to be clear. So the way it works, and if you are not familiar with the Kong Academy, in the Kong Academy we provide access. Well, you can do. There's several labs, and they are free, and you can just test the product and put. Yeah, you know, this is a sandbox. You can try different topic like OpenID Connect, service mesh. You have the service mesh also. Custom plugin also. There's quite a lot of labs, and this one, so I could just create it for this particular case. So let me just start the lab. And basically it works always the same way. Oh, let me reset it because I haven't reset it yet. So let me reset this one and recreate one. So what we are going to see is I'm going to start a Kubernetes cluster, a small one, key 3D, and hold on one sec. Why I cannot move it? Yeah, I don't know where moved the other one, but it doesn't matter. I just open another one. Okay. What good to see is both of them. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, following just a step here, I'm just putting the setup like this. And if I check, normally, you know what? I'm going to move here, otherwise I don't see it. Okay, so I have my cluster running. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone a Git to get some files that I need. So same, it's available, so you will be able to do it. Here, first thing, when you one thing that I haven't mentioned, when you use Kubernetes Gateway API, it's not installed by default in your Kubernetes cluster. This is done as CRDs. They decided to not follow feature gates and so on, the way that it's done normally. One of the reasons is because the Kubernetes project is starting to be quite big, and if everything needs to move at the same pace, it's start to slow down everybody. And the second reason, it means that they are not linked to one version of Kubernetes at the moment. So as soon as you are on a version that is greater than 1.16, it should work. So and you have two versions of it. You have the standard, the stable one, and where is my, I don't see the copy. Okay, doesn't matter. You have the standard one or the experimental. It's not this one. It's here. So now the CRDs is installed. Next step is I'm going to install the Kubernetes Ingress controller. And to do that, I'm going to deploy it. But before that, the same thing is I need to activate the controller feature gates, because since they are beta, they are not by default there. So instead of doing that, since if I check, here, on this file. I don't have it. But if I go, I put another one here in this level. So if I do a grep again now, yeah, so I have it now defined. So let me just deploy Kong. So it's deploying the Kong Ingress controller with Kong, and since it's the enterprise version, there is also a license. There's created all the different secrets, and it should be done in a few seconds. Once it's done, I should have this, so I can check once the pods are, yes, here. Right, so it's running. If I try now to reach the proxy, it will answer as usual. Well, if you do this, I have it somewhere. Polar proxy. No root match. This means that the proxy is awake, is up and running, but there is no matching root, so is just rejecting the call. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to install a dummy service. So this is an echo service. So it creates just a, so if I do here, just create an echo here, an echo pod on an echo service that we are going to use. And basically, when you call him and you ask something like host name, he answers what is his host name, and that's it. So now let's deploy the different things. So first of all, I'm going to deploy the gateway class. So let's have a look. Where am I? So you see, this is what contains the file, just the API version, the kind, and this is we just defined that there is a Kong, and that's and you have to put this annotation and the controller name. This is a by default one. If you change it, you have to change it here also. Okay. It seems that they cannot find the. So I'm just going to install it. Now it works. Okay. Now I can do what I want. Okay. Okay. One thing also is if you check the value in this file, You see that I have the host name is a Kong example. I'm going to change it to the real proxy name. So for that, I'm just going to run to create this variable to get his name. If I do echo proxy, oh, c'est pas bon ça. Hein? Le dollar. Oh, pardon. I'm thankful you are following. Okay. So this, and I'm going to replace them in the two files. Okay, now I'm going to apply these two files. I see that there's a return missing there. So I'm applying the gateway. When I apply the gateway, one thing that is interesting to check is when you do that, it's check if the gateway is available, and also see if there is an IP address here, and if it's ready at true. Otherwise, if you don't have this, there is something that is wrong. Same way, if you check the gateway class, you should see classes. Yeah, you should see accepted and at true. Once I've done that, so the last thing is apply the root. So if I apply the root, and let's have a look to the root, by the way. So the root is basically answer on the slash echo. Okay. So if I do now, let's do that. You see, he answered. This is the port name. Once I've done that, so it works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new, just another service. To have two. And then I'm going to, so it's create a second service. So I have echo 1 and echo 2, and if I look in my file, now I put a split between, so it can send, let's say 75%, it's not percent really, but 75 for here, for echo, and 25 for the other, 25 for the other one. And so if I do now, I should have, from time to time, the Z something, that was just this one. You see? I'm going to stop here. Any question?
How do we access this workshop?
The workshop is on Kong Academy, so you just need to go on education.kong.
I don't see it publicly. I don't think it is public.
Okay, I will check. Maybe. I thought that I put it public, but I will check. If not, I will put it. Okay. Any other question?
So currently there is absolutely not Ingress controller on our cluster, just API gateway.
Yeah. Well, there is the Ingress controller, but there is no Ingress spec that are
We
deployed.
didn't word it.
No, I haven't created any Ingress spec. The only thing that I've created is when I run it, I just created the specification for the API gateway.
Okay.
The gateway API. No question? Thank you.